This is Alexi Cosplay, and I'm going to show you how you can repurpose scrap 3D prints for cosplay and eliminate seam lines with PLA welding. This only works for PLA, not for ABS 3D printing. Alright, so in this video, I'm going to tell you how you can use PLA welding with a soldering iron to repurpose scrap parts, create new objects similar to like using like a 3D pen, and then getting rid of seam lines that can come up in your 3D prints. Once I'm done explaining, I'm going to use some time-lapse footage with timestamps so you know where things are. I'm out of storage on both my computer and my phone, so I'm trying to get this video out like ASAP. One final thing is that I usually make my own 3D files, like with the lanterns for Pinwheel and for the Dark Souls Zweihander. But since this was something I just wanted to hang on my wall and test for a video of the PLA process and then test out using spot putty for sanding, I just downloaded a file from online, but I don't like the details on it, especially around the handle. It's not exactly how it is in-game, but I guess if I wanted to have it look exactly like in-game, I should make it myself. But I don't have the time, which is again why I'm downloading this one. Okay, so first thing is you want to stop throwing away failed 3D prints like this one. This one, as you can see, was a fail for the Zweihander. This was supposed to be like a perfect circle, and PVC pipe is supposed to fit through it, but it was too shrunk. Not sure what I'm gonna do with this one yet, but I've already made a shelf out of some other scrap parts from the Zweihander itself. So with PLA, it says that you can recycle it and that it breaks down, but really over time it takes too long, and a lot of it just gets thrown up into wastelands anyways. And a lot of things that people are printing end up being like junk or stuff that sits in your desk that you end up throwing away anyways. And you can use a lot of that to make a lot of really cool pieces. So what you do with any prints that you have that are like fails or just junk, you just put them in a drawer, save them for later. I was gonna print out a new shelf, but it looked like it'd take like 8 to 12 hours, and it'd just be a big waste of plastic when I already have so much junk that I can reuse. It only took about like within 2 hours to have this whole thing made. It's still 2 hours of like actual work instead of like just printing in the background, but I did get to make use of a lot of scrap, so that was nice. And I saved money because I didn't have to buy a whole new roll of 3D filament. Similar to like a 3D pen, you can make new objects out of filament. One of the pieces, I can't remember which one of these two completely snapped off, and I was able to make a whole new one. And then the other one was a print fail, and I just had to add on to it. I think this one was the fail, the thinner one. So this thing was a failed part, and this piece got completely knocked off, and I had to build it up from about like here. I just made like a spire. After a while, it's hard to get it really, really thin, so up here is a little bit fatter than it's supposed to be on the model, but if you don't look too closely, it's almost impossible to see. You could do a very similar thing with a 3D pen, but one thing that a Woodburner or soldering iron has over a 3D pen is that you can make a lot of big holes with it, and you can use not only like filament, and you can melt down scrap pieces as new material. You can also use the Woodburner to cut pieces, but I wouldn't really recommend it if you can cut it with like a handsaw or anything else, because it does quite take a while to get through a lot of thick plastic, and it really messes up your part. It's not a very clean cut at all. And finally, the last thing that you can do with PLA welding is that you can get rid of seam lines. This test sword that I printed, it was at an 8% infill, I think, and it didn't have more than 2 walls. I think it was just 1 wall, but I'm not 100% sure. So probably the most challenging piece to weld together, just because if you get too hot, if you run too hot with the soldering iron, you can just like melt the whole wall, and you have to like fill it back in. That's another thing is with the PLA welding is you'll want something with an adjustable temperature. I have a Woodburner one, so it just goes by colors from like yellow, orange, red, or like, no, it's yellow, light orange, dark orange, and then red. I run it in about the dark orange area. If you have one where you can adjust the temperature, I'd recommend getting it around 3D printer levels to start off with. If you look at if you look on the side of your filament, it should say what temperature it should run at. I think mine's around like 210. That's usually what I put mine at. The hardest parts with these are the detailed parts, like right here. but it has a lot better time with the flat parts right here. Another reason that this one isn't quite perfect on the seam lines, is that when I printed these out, each piece wouldn't fit flush together just because my printer isn't very fine-tuned. So I would have had to add a whole new layer right here of 3D print filament, but I just didn't have the time. Like that would have taken so many hours. So there's just going to be like a gap, or more like a bump right here of where this higher part slopes down to the new one. And if you're wondering about this line, I actually printed, I combined two pieces in my slicer because I have a taller 3D printer, and this is actually just one piece that got like crunched as it was printing. This line wasn't something that I welded, and it actually turned out to be the worst seam out of all of it, especially right about here. You can see there's like a big line towards the top. This one's a little like bubbly just because of different sizes, but on the other side it's very hard to notice that there's a seam right here. So, fuck, what was I gonna say? As you can see, the print lines, you can kind of see right here. This one was different. These are the tips. Fuck, I hit myself.